Hello everybody, it's Mrs. Pound and I am back with another video from chapter 2.4 on protists from Purposeful Design Life Science. The section I want to talk about today is section 243 on algae. Our objectives for today are going to be to defend why algae are classified as protists instead of plants, identify the four main groups of algae, and list the major features of each algae group. So you might say, stop, wait a minute, algae are plants, and algae are like plants because they photosynthesize. They contain chlorophyll, which is the green pigment that captures light energy for photosynthesis. And in fact, some scientists still classify algae as a plant. However, algae are not like plants because they do not reproduce from seeds or spores, but rather by binary fission. So just splitting in half for the most part, a lot like bacteria. So that is one argument against algae being plants, and by placing it in kingdom Protista, as we're talking about it. So there are four main types of green algae, and probably the one you're most familiar with is green algae. Green algae are the primary producers for freshwater ecosystems, provides a lot of oxygen in those ecosystems as well, and uses up a lot of carbon dioxide. And as we're talking about these different types of algae, they're classified basically by their color, by which pigments show up the most in them. Brown algae have blades, which are leaf-like structures of algae, and you can see here is some brown algae. Now, they also contain chlorophyll, but it's masked by other pigments, and so you can see those blades here that look very leaf-like. They also have what are called holdfasts. These are root-like structures an organism uses to anchor itself. You can't see them in the picture, but that is what holds algae in place a lot of times, especially the brown algae. Now, there are some free-floating brown algae as well. They do not all have these holdfasts. And they also have air bladders. These are grape-like bulbs that keep an organism afloat. And you can see those air bladders on the leaves all over here. Those are air bladders that allow the algae to float. And this group of algae also contains some of the largest algae. This is the giant kelp, which can be as long as 90 meters long. So that's the world's largest protist, believe it or not, since many protists are unicellular. Also, from brown algae is edible. A lot of people eat brown algae. Cattle will graze on brown algae that's left on the beach. And brown algae is also used as it's a food additive that is added to things like salad dressings and other foods to make them smooth. There's also red algae, which has a red color to it. It has red pigment. Again, there's still the chlorophyll. And this algae can live in water deeper than other algae because of its color, because that red pigment will still help it to absorb certain colors of light that it needs for photosynthesis. So it is actually beneficial for it to be red. And again, red algae is a common food additive. If you've seen the words carrageenan on the list in a food for what is in it, you have eaten red algae. Finally, there's golden algae, and golden algae can form swarmer cells and act as heterotrophs. If for some reason golden algae cannot perform photosynthesis, it can actually swim around, and here you can see the water is kind of cloudy. That is because the golden algae tends to be more unicellular, and it can swim around and it can actually eat other protists and small organisms in the water if it cannot perform photosynthesis. And this also, there can be these algal blooms that are toxic to fish and other organisms in the water. And algae is just a wonderful thing that God has created. But again, if there is pollution in an area, algae can get out of balance and we can have what are called algal blooms that can kill things in the water. And it can basically choke out all the living things in the water because even though it produces oxygen, if there's an imbalance and there's more algae dying, than are performing the photosynthesis, the decomposition of the algae will actually take the oxygen out of the water and cause it so that other organisms cannot have enough oxygen to live. So anything out of balance is harmful. Is harmful. So our objectives today were to defend why algae are classified as protists instead of plants, identify the four groups of algae, and list the major features of each algae group. Don't forget your 5 questions in your notes and keep watching to answer the questions at the end.